I got a guy in here that explains the helicopter blades.
Yeah.
In so doing proves that the helicopter blades are even dumber. They're flying with the Force, not the sabers, which is already established as the thing for short range levitation.
So
if that's the case, then why do they need to spin at all?
Yeah, sure. You can use the Force to fly, sure. But then why that?
Why hold up your helicopter blades?
Like why do you need these things to occur, you know? For the visual of the helicopter blade? Is that literally
so that
it?
the kids understand they could fly?
Because spins make things think
it's so
helicopter
stupid.
move go?
Star Wars is the worst. I really like a bunch of things in Star Wars, but I now realize that everything that I like in Star Wars is either the first 3 movies or video games that came out like decades later.
Everything you like in Star Wars is powered by something you hate.
Yeah.
Something.
And after rewatching this scene from Castle Super Beast, I can't help but agree, but only just slightly. You see, I'm someone that's coming at this from the angle of I've only watched the mainline movies except for Han Solo, and played a handful of video games, along with watching just a couple episodes of the individual TV shows. And I've never read any of the comic books or the novels associated with Star Wars. So with the limited experience that I do have with Star Wars, I keep coming to the same conclusion, that it's a mediocre franchise. And even though I remember watching the prequels at theater, the truth is that the video games is probably more of the reason why I even consider myself a fan of Star Wars. Because for me, when it came to the movies, there was only just a handful of scenes that I enjoyed out of each individual film. For me, this is how each trilogy stands. The original trilogy is just solid but dated. The prequel trilogy is overhated. And the recent trilogy is just crap. No one really shit talks the original trilogy only because when you look back through time, they are technically speaking revolutionary films. You see, everything about this version of Star Wars is so ahead of its time in terms of storytelling and for fantasy that I almost cannot foresee a future where Lord of the Rings gets created if it wasn't for this version of Star Wars. But the truth is, the more I keep recalling this movie from memory, I keep just thinking about the okay acting with the okay dialogue and the okay storytelling with the okay plot. And that's sort of what this series is. It's just one solid movie with 2 solid sequels. But let's be real, Darth Vader is the motherfucker that steals the show. And not only is he a well-designed character, he's also probably the best written and again has probably the most seen. And the truth is that for Star Wars, it is such a blessing and a curse that this one character has carried you throughout, 50 years? Like, I just want you to think about that for a second. For 46 years, this one character has literally defined what it means to be a badass villain, but only for Star Wars. And not just that, he also has probably one of the best character reveals of all time. Along with probably one of the best redemption arcs of any character too. I mean, you remove Darth Vader and some of the most iconic lines, what you have is a pretty kind of slow, boring paced trilogy. You know what? I'm just going to leave it at that. Even though I still think they're solid movies, there are moments where it's just like, oh, that's kind of cool. But Darth Vader is really... like, honestly, if Darth Vader wasn't so good of a character, this franchise would suck. Now the prequel trilogy.
Gems of good ideas, I think. It's just none of them are executed well in any capacity. No. That's the problem. But I did want to talk a moment just about, I mean, we talk about Star Wars in general, just lead up to like the revitalization in the late 90s, everything with the Thrawn trilogy and things. But when the movie was actually finally coming out, what was your guys' impression of it? Were you excited? And when you did see it, what was your initial reaction? Because I think for a lot of people, when they saw this movie, they were, they liked it. I think most people, there is this view, there's this people say like, oh, when it first came out, everyone hated it. It's like, people were very excited about this and they loved it.
No, it had built up a legend.
Yeah.
I remember us going to see it. We got to go to a critic's preview, and it was already people intense. Like you see now with homeless people camped out in a line waiting for it to start in 2 days.
Yeah.
And we all came out of it like, that was
right.
It was just one of those, like, as the days of the week passed by.
Right.
Because I remember it was at the end of the week, and I was starting to write a review of it. And I was going to start out, glowing. But the more I start getting into it, the more I was like, hold on. that was a bunch of bullshit. it was just slowly dawning on me because we had done our review on the show. I think we saw it on like a Monday or Tuesday, and then we did our review on the air on Wednesday. And I remember what it was. Rather than not like it for all the things wrong with it, it was Jar Jar's fault. He was the bad thing about it. It was fine except for him. And it was like, nah, he was just the scapegoat. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't good. But there's a lot of shit wrong with this.
Yes. He was easy target.
That doesn't even involve him.
You know, there's a video out there about a director, I think by the name of Dave Filoni, describing just how brilliant the Star Wars prequel trilogy actually is. And I at the very least believe it is worth a watch. I'm not trying to change your mind or the way how you feel about the prequel trilogies. All I want to do is change your perspective a little bit. If you've been paying attention to what I've been saying, I have alluded to the fact that I do not have a favorite Star Wars movie. I only have favorite moments in each individual films, even the shitty sequel trilogy. But personally, I really do believe that the prequel trilogy has probably the best story. It's funny because the more I think about it, I realize that the problems with the prequel trilogy are almost exactly the same as the sequel trilogy, which is that the problem with the prequel trilogy was George Lucas's direction, the dialogue, sometimes the pacing, and just the overall execution of the movie. But the truth is that everything that I've listed can be found throughout all of the movies, especially the acting. And I'll be honest, the acting in the prequel trilogy definitely is the worst. However, that is because of George Lucas's direction. However, there's also a lot of good acting in the prequel trilogy as well. Like Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn, really good. Ewan McGregor was fantastic doing the Obi-Wan impersonation throughout all three films. Even Hayden Christensen was good, however it was only during Revenge of the Sith. The truth is that George Lucas destroyed these people's careers for a very long time. I think we need a terminology for it, and I think what this disease is called director's narcissism. I may or may not make a video about that. But the truth is that the moment you stop becoming blinded to all the weird bullshit about it, you start actually realizing just how good the story actually is. The truth is that there is two stories being told in the prequel trilogy. The first part of the story is how the villains from the original trilogy eventually got their power, while the real story being told is how Darth Vader came to be, and this perception that he was supposed to be this chosen savior. And when it comes to the Phantom Menace, the truth is that there's only so much you could do with a child actor.
Moving on, though, it's like, okay, because one of the big exciting things for this film, of course, this is going to be the origin of Darth Vader.
Sure.
You know. And please laugh, please do.
You
Go
say
ahead.
so.
I mean, Jake Lloyd kind of did go to the dark side once his movie was over.
Shit! Yeah, I know, poor kid.
And I don't even want to like talk negatively about Jake Lloyd because as I said before, he was an actor and he's given these lines and he's given this direction, and so that's why his performance is the way it is.
Yeah.
The choice to make him 9 years old and to just be happy about being a slave, it never sat well with me or anyone else. Like literally yelling "yippee" when he finally gets off, for work from all of his slave duties. It's really bizarre to me, and it's made all the more awkward when you have someone like Padme Amidala just lusting after him.
How long have you been here? Since I was very little. 3, I think.
You can just literally see him looking at the cue cards off
I
screen.
gotta say, she does look really young. Like she's only 2 years older.
I think they did.
Education.
Clearly.
And I wasn't so much bothered by him being happy he's a slave. It genuinely made me kind of sad. It's like, he's grown up and this is all he's known.
He's just ignorant to it. This is his way of life.
My mom and I were sold to Gardulla the Hutt, but she
Jabba the
lost
Hutt?
us betting on the pod races.
You're a slave?
I'm a person, and my name is Anakin.
Person, my name is
Yeah,
Anakin.
I
He's
walked
not,
away
he's
at
not
that
wrong.
point. I'd be like,
All right. I'm looking at your thread. Told me you a slave.
This is the origin of Darth Vader, an iconic villain.
Yeah.
People love him from the original series.
Right.
And I think I have the idea of making him a slave is so interesting because that would explain why he has this rage.
Oh, absolutely.
Why he's so angry.
That is the problem, is to have him as this little kid with no rage. And
Right.
I get the ideas to go like, he was a happy little child, but the dark side flipped him over to show that contrast. But it's like, you kind of need more than that.
You want to see in a film when you do an origin, you want to see, not exactly like they did Corella or anything like that, but you want to see what they're gonna draw on to
Yeah.
piss them off,
Yeah.
and like, oh, that's why he's so angry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why he doesn't like this. Oh, that's why this sets him off over here. You know.
I do agree with Double Toasted here in the sense that they really did make him a little bit too happy and naive mostly. Look, I'm not gonna blame Jake Lloyd for anything. All we know is that he was a new kid actor given shit direction from a shit director. And it really is funny because for the longest time we would only blame actors for a movie sucking dick. Despite the fact that I could think of multiple movies on the top of my head where the kid acting was really good. Like for Stand By Me, Goonies, and even Harry Potter. Oh, and it wasn't just Natalie Portman and Jake Lloyd fucking up. Even Samuel Jackson was coming off as flat. And let's be real, the only good thing about Samuel Jackson is his purple lightsaber. However, you don't get to see that in The Phantom Menace. And I guess I will end it by saying the best scenes in The Phantom Menace only happens when Darth Maul shows up. I don't know why, but there's something almost ironically funny knowing that in episode 2 is probably the worst out of this trilogy, and yet it's probably where the story kind of fleshes itself out a little bit more when it came to Anakin slowly but surely starting to reveal his dark side, and how Darth Sidious was like slowly but surely creating his army behind the scenes. Like, I forget what the alien race is called, but they're like the skinny, super tall looking amphibious things. But Darth Sidious said the council demanded they make a clone army. And the truth is that that's why Obi-Wan went there. And that's when he runs into Jango Fett. And then we start running into the story of Anakin and how his relationship is slowly starting to deepen with Padme. And then out of nowhere he starts getting nightmares about his mother. He tells the council about them, but they kind of just dismiss it as being, well, oh, they're just dreams. But they turn out being visions. And his visions wind up being true. And the truth is that his visions are actually kind of violent, especially when you see his mother. She's all cut up and bloodied, and it looks like she's being tortured and is like slowly dying. You know, of course the Jedi say forget about it, but he's not as emotionless as they are. So of course he can't forget about it. Besides, that's his mom. So each and every day passes and you see anxiety and curiosity keep growing, to the point where he goes back to his home planet where he was a slave and tries to figure out exactly what happened to his mom. He figures out that the Tusken Raiders took her, and of course he's angry. He goes searching for her, finds them, and his dreams, his nightmares, has come true. He eventually goes on this genocide run and just pretty much kills every Tusken Raider part of that camp. And kind of unfortunately, that is the moment that you, the viewer, along with Anakin, is supposed to start to realize that the Jedi Council is really flawed. And despite how funny it is to watch the mom kind of flop to her death in Anakin's arms, it really is a very powerful scene where it's like, oh my god, that's acting right there. And there's a moment that's very real where emotionally he feels so alone and segregated from the other Jedi Masters that the only person that he feels like he can trust, which is Padme. And he vents out his emotions towards her. Which unfortunately years later is why, you're supposed to start seeing that Qui-Gon Jinn would have been a much better teacher for Anakin than Obi-Wan. Because Qui-Gon Jinn would have been the kind of guy that, would have comforted him, would have actually been like a father, would have been like, he actually would have brought structure and stability to this boy. But instead he starts doing what a lot of boys would have done at that age, which is he needs people to blame. So he slowly blames himself, then he switches it over to the Jedi Council, and then he switches it to Obi-Wan. And truthfully, I probably would have done what he did if I was a young, arrogant, cocky, reckless kid, who, kids when you're that young, you don't know how to control anything. So feeling powerful makes you feel like you're in control. So for him, genocide, that entire Tusken Raider camp, was a way to not only get a quick revenge, but to feel like he could control something. Because he decided to take control when the Jedi Council wouldn't. I'm not gonna lie, I would be a terrible Jedi. Episode 3 is Anakin's full descent into the dark side. And it actually starts off pretty cool. You see it's the Jedi hunting down Count Dooku, who has apparently captured, well, as the viewers know, Darth Sidious, also known as Palpatine. And it is so interesting to watch how Anakin just slowly gets manipulated by Palpatine, slowly but surely letting him feed into his dark side, eventually getting what he wants, which is Count Dooku is no longer any of use to me. Kill him. And at first Anakin tries his best to resist, but Palpatine convinces him and he does it. Which is supposed to show that, oh, he might be resisting me, but he soon will break and I will be in full control over him. And this time we start to see that Anakin is starting to have nightmares again, and this time it's that of Padme. And this is why the story is actually kind of good, because in episode 2 you start to see this linkage between his mother and Padme, which are two people he really did love. However, his mom dying really did affect him, which is why even though he felt alone, there was only one person he felt like he could truly go to, which was Padme. And surprisingly, it wasn't Obi-Wan or anybody of the Jedi Council. Because all throughout the story, Anakin only has two loves. His mom and Padme. And when he starts seeing that Padme's life is on the line too, he's like, I can't lose her. But for some reason, he decides to keep it secret. Which is why when Darth Sidious starts telling them the story of how there was a Sith Lord that managed to extend the lives not only of himself, but of the people around him, he gets interested. And when he wonders how the senator eventually gets this weird story, he eventually comes to the conclusion that, oh, maybe the senator is the Sith Lord we're looking for. So he eventually tells Mace Windu that, hey, I think he's the Sith Lord. Mace Windu says, I'm gonna go check it out, but it is also the first time you ever see the Jedi Council make a very rash decision to kill the senator. But with the story of the extended life fresh in Anakin's mind, and for him that means protecting Padme, he's like, it would be best in my interest to keep the senator alive. And as we know, the senator gets in power, Order 66, Anakin slays a bunch of younglings, and then an epic battle between Yoda and Palpatine, and another epic battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin happens, and Anakin loses, becomes Darth Vader, movie over. That's pretty much the recap for the prequel trilogy. The truth is that all these movies have flaws, and the quality of these movies are like below average, except for Revenge of the Sith. However, rethinking these movies, I start realizing that they each end with a very awesome battle. And don't get me wrong, the story that's being told is great, but again, the only time that Phantom Menace is ever fun is, the pod racing scene and the couple battles with Darth Maul. And Attack of the Clones really had a really awesome battle in that huge dome arena thing with all those aliens watching. And then it becomes droids versus the Jedi, and you actually get to see how the Jedi fight as this large group. But that's only at the end of the film. And Revenge of the Sith is truly the only good film out of this trilogy. Even though it's only a 5 out of 10 movie, it's better than the other ones. Which means that this is the movie with the highest percentage of rewatchability for the prequels. Let me be 100 with y'all. I remember my brother showing me the teaser trailer for The Force Awakens and getting genuinely excited. And then my brother asked me, hey, if I bought some tickets, are you willing to come with me? And I was like, yeah. He bought the tickets, we arrived, and we stood outside of our theater. And don't get me wrong, we were definitely excited as we got there a little bit early, so we were near the entrance. And so we eventually saw this line getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they finally opened the doors and we went to go watch the movie. But after the movie was over and we left the theaters, I knew that this trilogy was gonna be shit. Because the first thought that popped into my head was this. Was it good? Honestly, the movie was so mediocre that I almost didn't want to believe that it was that boring. I think what a lot of people kind of bring up in the sense of the Mary Sue, which is that not only do you get to see everything perfect about a character, but you see them get rewarded for their stupidity and being inept. But The reason why this movie was so boring was because it decided to really go safe with it. And Harrison Ford even makes the comment like, oh, so what? It's just the Death Star, but it's bigger. And I'm like, you're really making me want to watch the old movie. And I just remember leaving the theaters just feeling unsatisfied and unexcited to watch the next entry. Like, look, had The Force Awakens been a standalone film that got you interested for, like, the real trilogy, then we definitely would be having a different discussion. And I probably wouldn't have needed to make this video. But I just remember returning to my house and thinking, I don't need to watch the other two movies. But because of COVID and me not having a job means I had all this time in the world to start watching shit on Disney+. I truly believe that The Last Jedi isn't as bad as people claim it to be. However, there are a lot of pointless scenes to this movie. But not just pointless scenes, also kind of useless characters. And even though The Last Jedi might have been the beginning of the pointless scenes and the pointless characters, The Rise of Skywalker does it 10 times worse, though. And as we know, there's no cohesiveness throughout any of these movies. In all honesty, I kind of feel bad for the Asian bitch that plays Rose, because she really did get the short end of the stick, and outright removed from The Rise of Skywalker just for some lesbians to kiss in the background. Unfortunately, she is also the character that has the pointless scenes. Like, for some reason, when she first shows up, she's like strangely infatuated with Finn. And then Finn and Rose sort of have the second pointless scene where it's like, oh, you know, our friends are about to die, but let's go gamble. And then they share the second pointless scene of, oh, we need to free the animals. In which, story-wise, it's fucking convenient how when they go to jail, it's like they somehow meet the person that they're fucking looking for. And Princess Leia having Force powers despite her not wearing the Jedi robes. And it kind of does feel like it's out of nowhere. Because it's like, we saw her die, but then it's like, oh, I'm just gonna activate my Jedi powers and fly back to safety. And I don't know if you remember the scene that happened before. It's like, and this was something that kind of pissed me off about that movie, where it was like, the reason why she ended up out in space was because for some reason the Empire has a force field penetrative round. Yeah, for some reason, just like a lot of other shit in this movie, it just doesn't get brought up again. It just gets wiped away to the side, like, oh, forget the fact that they have force field penetrative rounds. They're not going to use them. I know that this might trigger a couple of people, but the truth is that I didn't like the character Poe. And for some reason, they just decided to make him an outright dumbass. Like, I get it, he was supposed to be like your Han Solo replacement, but at the very least, Han Solo was fucking smart. Oh, not Poe, he's gonna do the dumbass thing, he's gonna take all of your X-Wings, all 300 of them, and then he's gonna drive back to destroy one Star Destroyer, and return back with 50. Thanks, Poe. Yeah, that was so worth it. Yeah, so when the purple-haired bitch came in and was all like, what the fuck were you doing, dumbass? You're like, yeah, what the fuck were you doing, dumbass? But oh, not the fucking viewers watching it at the time. People were seeing, oh my god, purple hair, woke, hate this movie. Bruh, that's legit what the fans were thinking. Well, if I see a bitch with purple hair, how dare this woke hoe decide to talk to my man crush that way? Hope you die, whore. I'll get this bitch out of my movie. I wish I was making that shit up. If my memory serves me right, it just ends with them barely escaping with their lives. Unfortunately, the only good part about this entire trilogy is the weird bond between Rey and Ren. And guess what? Some of the best scenes in this entire trilogy happens in The Last Jedi. Between the conversations that Rey and Ren were having. You know, with both of them trying to figure each other out and like persuade one another. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm very optimistic when it comes to bad films. So on the off chance that a film truly does suck, I tend to emotionally show my anger and frustration. The Rise of Skywalker is a 1 out of 10 fuck you movie. The only thing that's good about The Rise of Skywalker is visuals and acting. But everything else, Like plot, story, characters, dialogue, pacing, even the fighting is terrible. And some of the fight scenes may not be completely terrible, but god damn are they fucking boring. The biggest problem that the sequel trilogy falls on, episodes 1 through 6, sort of shows this very much contained story that ended with Return of the Jedi. So them wasting this trilogy on extending that storyline was kind of a bold move. Unfortunately, it just didn't work. And the truth is that this modern trilogy actually could have worked, especially if you do what I say, which is keep The Force Awakens, because The Force Awakens is really the only good film of this trilogy. And then remove the episode title to it, pretend that your original episodes 8 and 9 don't exist, and create the real trilogy. Like, hire someone who actually has the time and effort and passion into Star Wars, where he's actually willing to write you a trilogy, and then have someone else film it. I don't think I forgot about Rogue One or Solo, but the truth is that I only watched Rogue One, and it was alright. Solo, from what I've heard from my siblings, is just fucking terrible. But I made this video based off the fact that I'm mostly trying to recall the Star Wars as a whole from memory, and I haven't watched episodes 1 through 6 in a very long time, and maybe I will rewatch those movies. Maybe to see if I was really wrong about these films. And that's all I have to say about Star Wars. I probably won't make another video unless I feel like it. But I hope y'all enjoyed yourself. And if not...
In the meantime, and as usual, go fuck yourself.
And remember...
Cool.
Laser swords are cool forever.
Laser
That's
swords-
where I'm at on Star
laser
Wars.
like we just strip it all the way down. Laser swords are cool forever.
Yeah.